Let's explore the implications of the brain seeing, not our eyes. I recall learning in science class as a child that the lens in our eyes casts an upside-down image on our retina, but we see the world upright. I wondered, why would this be necessary? Although most think an upside-down image in the eyeball gets rotated to make it look right side up, that's not true. Instead, it is the brain firing nerve impulses that encodes the image in such a way that it is perceived right side up. In other words, our brain sees, not our eyes. Still not convinced? Here's a simple exercise to demonstrate this. Tilt your head 90 degrees while looking at an object. It will continue to look upright. If you were seeing with your eyes, the object would appear to be at an angle, but because the brain interprets what we see, the object stays upright. Another way that reveals our brain interprets what we are seeing is to think of the times you have returned someplace and see it in a whole new light. Maybe you comment, "I don't remember it looking like this." That's because your brain is perceiving it differently than the time before. Yet another example that proves the brain, not the eyes see, is when people who have witnessed a crime are asked to describe what happened or what the suspects look like. Often the witnesses will describe completely different looking people, including either sex, different types of hair, colors of skin, or various clothing they were wearing. Knowing this, let's consider the implications of our brain interpreting what we see, starting with what it reveals. First, the brain's interpretation of what we are looking at is influenced by many factors. For instance, if a white person is racist, the brain may be quick to assume a criminal is black in the case of witnessing a crime. Or when a person is skeptical and closed-minded, the brain may dismiss seeing something that he or she didn't believe in, such as a UFO or UAP. I have had this experience on several occasions where a group of us were watching a UFO and one or two people claimed to not see it at all. A second implication is asking why it is then necessary for the eyes to flip what we are looking at upside down. Since the brain deciphers what we are seeing, it could just as easily do it without this step. Going deeper down a rabbit hole, we might ask, is it possible that this step was done by divine design for us to remember that this reality is just an illusion? Hold that thought. A third inference is those in power knowing this fact about the brain could manipulate the human population by influencing us, such as with a narrative and repeated facts, exactly like the mainstream media does. Noam Chomsky suggested this to be the case, and is quoted as saying, "He who controls the media controls the minds of the public," unquote. In addition, the brain can be further manipulated by subliminal messages and hypnotic suggestions. There is a true story about a hypnotist during a show giving a post-hypnotic suggestion to a woman regarding a third person, a man from the audience, not being on the stage with them. Then he had the man stand in between him and the woman, and brought the woman out of the trance. He held up a watch behind the man, so there was no way she could see what it was, under ordinary circumstances. But because of the hypnotic suggestion, the woman could not see the man, believing he wasn't there. The hypnotist asked her what he was holding. To the audience's surprise, she said, "A watch." Then he asked her to tell him the time, and she did, looking puzzled, since, to her, it was easy to see. The audience was amazed, some gasped, and others clapped. Understanding the phenomenon that the brain sees, not our eyes, is why this was possible. Let's explore more ramifications regarding the brain seeing and perceiving. For instance, it may explain why people are experiencing the Mandela effect. This phenomenon occurs when a large part of the population recalls something one way, but currently, it has changed and others believe nothing has changed. There are hundreds of examples available. However, for the sake of demonstrating this point, here are two of the most intriguing. The first is the statue of the Thinker by Auguste Rodin. In this case, most people recall the hand being in a fist held against the forehead, but now, the hand is open and on his chin, to say nothing about an odd-looking cap now covering his hair. Proof that most of us remember the Thinker in a different way than it currently exists, is when people pose by the statue. There are many examples of people striking a pose with a closed fist to the forehead, in spite of the statue right next to them having an open hand on the chin. The general public is baffled by this phenomenon. It has led to countless debates and theories about alternate realities or collective false memories. On the other hand, to the awakened populace, these examples illustrate how our brain's interpretive processes is evidence of our impact on this reality. The next example proves the Mandela effect is not a matter of misremembering as skeptics claim. It is concerning the car JFK was riding in when he was assassinated. I am among many who clearly recall the car having 2 rows of seats and 4 people. But, now, the car is shown as having 3 rows of seats with 6 people in it. However, evidence of both cars existing is currently available. Different museums have the car as a 4-seater and others with a 6-seater. What do you remember? The Mandela effect could be a result of our brain being influenced affecting how we perceive this reality. Further, quantum physicists would benefit from taking this subject seriously and study whether this is more evidence that our reality is an illusion. The implications of this also extend to proving we individually and collectively are creating and actively changing our reality. Imagine if the Mandela effect we experience, like 2 different cars JFK was assassinated in, are clues to a more profound truth about our universe. What if these collective rememberings speak to the idea that reality is not as fixed as we believe, even explaining the existence of multiple parallel timelines? It also provides tangible proof that our individual and collective consciousness is shaping the world around us. This notion isn't just speculative. It aligns with theories in quantum physics, which describe the observer influences the observed. The implications are a metaphysician's dream. Since our brains can be influenced to perceive different versions of reality, then we are indeed co-creators of our existence. Every thought, every collective memory is crafting the fabric of our world. In essence, the once dismissed Mandela effect is showing us we are not just passive witnesses to reality but active participants in its creation. This challenges us to rethink everything we know about perception, memory, and the very nature of reality itself. Finally, an inspirational thought came to me while writing the content for this video that ventures down a different rabbit hole. It involves the question of whether or not and/or how our DNA has been manipulated. Contemplating how easily the brain can be influenced and knowing it changes our perception, behavior, and actions, we might ask, is there evidence our DNA has been manipulated? And more specifically, have we been disconnected from our third eye and much of the functions of the pineal gland? To better understand the magnitude of this question and potential answers, we first need to take a closer look at the pineal gland. The pineal gland is a small organ in the center of the brain, resembling a pine cone. Its commonly known function is to produce melatonin and serotonin, regulating sleep and wake cycles. But significantly more important is it acts as a transducer, converting energetic frequencies into experiences. It is this ability that has led to its being referred to as the third eye, where the pineal gland influences our perception and intuition. Further significance of the pineal gland comes from René Descartes, a 16th century mathematician and philosopher best known for the quote, "I think therefore I am." He proposed the pineal gland as the center of the soul. In his book Passions of the Soul, he described the pineal gland as the meeting place of the physical and spiritual worlds and wrote, "The body and spirit not only meet there, but each affects the other, and the repercussion extends in both directions." Unquote. So back to the question, has our DNA been manipulated? Many have wondered about this, especially after author Zecharia Sitchin wrote The Earth Chronicles, a series of books based on deciphering ancient Hebrew texts and Sumerian cuneiform tablets. He introduced us to extraterrestrial beings called the Anunnaki. The Sumerians documented in extreme details how these beings manipulated human DNA to create a slave race. In addition, the Anunnaki are often depicted holding a pine cone, so it begs the question, were we cut off from perceiving from the pineal gland? And on a more positive note, are we reactivating our abilities to perceive from the third eye as a part of our awakening, remembrance, and ascension? Either or both being a yes is a complete game changer and warrants in-depth research. In conclusion, the connection of the third eye pineal gland and a key to our spiritual evolution can be found in the Bible. It provides an uncanny similar description of the third eye to texts of the yogic and Hindu spiritual traditions. This verse is also interesting because the pineal gland is the only part of the brain that is single, not possessing a left and right hemisphere. Matthew 6:22, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye be single, your whole body shall be full of light." Now a message from the author, Simone. Thanks for watching. I really enjoyed putting this video together. Let me hear from you in the comments. An enormous thank you to those who give a thumbs up and subscribe.